All right, what's up, y'all? My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Today is the 6th of September, 2025. This video's title is The Importance of Even Shoulders. This is going to be a big video, actually, big time. So I'll talk about it as I do. Each of the four sides of In the Image Clothing Company. I'll talk about where clothing sits, and then we'll get into the discussion on what I mean by even height shoulders. Okay, left to right. So, in the Image Clothing Company, really what we are is allowing the human body to work. We're a company that, yes, we sell clothing, good, minimal, simple clothing, but we talk about the human body. We discuss the anatomy of the body in depth. The human body is just a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space, as I say. There's a center line to it, the sternum, the spine, the trachea, the nose, and our jaw. The jaw naturally stabilizes the entire body, and these things have to stay in the center of the body on Earth's gravity's center. Okay, gravity pulls down on everything at its center line, like these trees or a pole or anything at all. Okay, so there's a neutral position to every joint in the body, like the wrist that I show on camera. The body has to reside within its neutrals. And then there's rotations, there's operations, and all the ways that there is, every direction outside of the neutral. So we place clothing on our bodies and it has to stay centered, fit correct, where I'll discuss here in a minute, be made from 100% natural materials because the human body is, and that's how we allow the body to work. Stretch within clothing goes the opposite direction of the only way that muscles could ever work. Okay, muscles only contract, meaning getting shorter. There's opposing muscles to a function like the elbow. The biceps shortens to close the elbow. The triceps shorten to extend the elbow. There's only one way the human body could ever work. So when our clothing's placed on us, things like unnatural materials can alter the body. Things like ropes can very much alter the body. Drawstrings and shoelaces, anything placed around the body that's a rope. Okay, discrepancies, size-wise, discrepancies with weight. Okay, zippers, buttons, all the things, anything that could be uneven when there's a center line to the body on Earth's gravity. So we talk about these things as well as just letting our bodies stay natural in daily life. A lot of times I'll say eating, sleeping, standing, walking, sitting, breathing, hydration, right? But really everything. We just allow the body to work. So there's 1/4 of us in a nutshell, this side here, the main side. Now we have In the Image Clothing Company poodles as another 1/4 that we have. What we do under In the Image Clothing Company poodles is the same as allowing the human body to work, but it is for dogs. We specialize in purebred standard poodles and we let dogs stay natural. We do it through feeding dogs, but we also breed dogs, registering them properly under the American Kennel Club, advocating for doing so, keeping more dogs at homes and less dogs in shelters. But we do a lot with collars, leashes, harnesses, teaching owners of dogs how to stay natural while they're with their dog, like walking a dog, keeping your body in a proper position. We do a lot under In the Image Clothing Company poodles that actually applies to all dogs, but we personally as a company specialize in purebred standard poodles. But one thing we do have that you can involve yourself in if you'd like to, if you can, is poodle parade events. Here in the state of Utah, the United States of America, we've got a lot of beautiful nature. We will have a lot of poodle parade events. What they really are is you can bring your purebred poodles of any size or poodle mixes of any size here to the state of Utah. We'll do a lot in nature. We do things for the environment like Clean the Creek specific poodle parade events where we actually clean up trash, and I'll give information on letting dogs stay natural, okay? But a lot of it's also just to hang out, have a good time. We can share and spread what we do, talk about In the Image Clothing Company. Yeah, it'll be a good time, okay? If you'd like to ever come to a poodle parade event, just check InTheImageClothingCompany.com for scheduling, okay? And can and can't as far as things you can bring or can't bring. Say hello to the sun. It peeked out from behind the clouds. So another 1/4 of us in the Image Clothing Company music. What I do mainly for the body is show the sizing and setup of guitar. I play guitar, and to keep that neutral wrist, we need to keep our guitars in a size that allows that, and then be set up in a way where all the fine little motor skills we do with our fingers are allowed to happen in the hands only working inline position, okay? So there's also lyricism that I do and a lot of music that just gets placed there that I've made, centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ with the topics of the music and what we do. So there you go, In the Image Clothing Company music. Okay, things like Metronome, Madness. It's very interesting, I'll say it like that. There's a lot of good insights actually in the music that I put out under In the Image Clothing Company music. Yeah, seriously. So we've got In the Image Clothing Company podcast. We have 155 episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast as of the last one we have made. That's where we have deep discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. We're all human beings, we're all on the same earth. We all have one God, and we discuss him there as he says that he is. We do it imperfectly, but we do it as well as we can. We get into some deep discussions, and there's a lot of good insights on just life, okay? So there you go, each of the four sides of us, at least a little bit of them. In InTheImageClothingCompany.com, you'll find human being clothing, as I said, staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work through being made from 100% natural materials as well. But then we have dog products that apply to all dogs, not just poodles, but staying centered, like keeping collars centered for human beings, as we talk about so often. Dog products will have all the same intent on allowing the body to work when it comes to whatever we ever put out for dogs, okay? Collars, leashes, harnesses, and whatever we dabble in or get in depth with as time progresses, okay? So there you go. Now we have poodles that we'll be breeding. I talk about it a little bit here and there, but also on InTheImageClothingCompany.com. There'll just be a pretty thorough screening process for who the poodles will go to, okay? Because, yeah, right. We're doing a lot with poodles, always a big name in poodles, In the Image Clothing Company poodles, as I have been saying since we launched it. Once we get a little bit more into that, as far as us actually doing more with it than just announcing what we will be doing, you'll see how big poodles will be under In the Image Clothing Company, okay? So clothing for everybody though has to sit in the same location. If you're a man or a woman, tall or short, skinny or fat, any age, any part of the earth, from any time period to ever be, you're a human being. I like to number it out just because anybody and everybody. The human body just works how it does, and our hips can't be restricted. So our pants need to be entirely above our hips, the waistband, at our natural waist. That's where we bend side to side at our spine. And then with our pants at our natural waist, we need it to be slightly higher in the front than the rear, the waistband angle, because then we can keep our bodies in its neutral position, in their neutral positions on Earth's gravity, okay? Things like the core will then stay activated. Things like the hamstrings can stay activated, working in conjunction with the core. And there you go, neutral position on Earth's gravity. Now, we have tops that we wear. The seams on top of our shoulders need to sit evenly behind the peak of our shoulders, because our shoulders only ever work behind our head. We'll talk about that a lot in this video, the anatomy of the shoulders, how and where the shoulders connect and what they do. But the shoulders follow shoulder seams. Okay, the edges of our shoulder seams of our tops should be as close as we can get just right to the edges of our shoulder, because it's both a joint of material and a joint of body parts. Okay, and those things need to mesh as close as we can get, and then our bodies can just work. Two things we have as prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company to further the non-alteration, if you will, of the body. Firstly, we are just weaving ropes across our feet that we call shoelaces. There's only one way to weave a rope across all the mechanics going on in the feet without altering them, and that's what we title In the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique, found wherever you can find our 5-word name as a whole, In the Image Clothing Company. We tie shoes as well. Shoes have to be tied evenly over toward the center line of the body, because there's two sides to the body, okay? Opposing knots on opposing sides of the center line then allow our bodies to work. Our feet grip arches inward and they keep us vertical, and they oppose each other, and that's where the strength comes from in the body, okay? From its foundation. And then secondly, we remove all tags from clothing. Anywhere tags are placed in clothing, similar to unnatural materials that are nowadays made into clothing, Tags didn't even exist just decades ago from today's date. And they're either causing a physical gap, changing the body's only working position, and or just not allowing musculature to activate, and then the body's just being damaged. No compensation can happen within the body when everything is there with a role to play. Okay, so let's talk about it. We have 2 shoulders. Okay, if you do. Everybody's body is slightly different. Some people have had things, deformities from birth or throughout their life, amputations, major injuries. Let's say you've got 2 shoulders. Either way, there's gravity. We've got 2 sides to the body, okay? The point with even shoulder height is a lot of things, okay? And the point with talking about it under In the Image Clothing Company is we allow the body to work. It's not about clothing. It's just about the human body, our company, In the Image Clothing Company. But we place clothing on us just about always, and it has to just let our bodies work. Allow our bodies to work, okay? If we have 2 shoulders on each side of our body, there's 1, okay? All the musculature of the body, like I discussed, just because that is how it is, it only contracts to work. The musculature that goes into the shoulder, I'll run over at least a basic explanation of at least a lot of the musculature of the shoulder, okay? Here in the center is our sternum. It's a bone, okay? From the top of our rib cage here, where these collarbones connect, okay? And then all the way down to where our bottom ribs come up, okay? The farthest down rib comes into the sternum, and the collarbone comes into the sternum, and that's how far it spans, okay? Now, from our sternum, that's where our musculature inserts. Here, the pectoral muscles, okay? We've got a lower pectoral muscle coming from the sternum out to the shoulder. We've got an upper pectoral muscle coming from the sternum out to the shoulder. On the right side, that contracts, pulling the shoulder from the outside of the shoulder at one insertion to the sternum in the center of the body at the other insertion. Okay? Bringing the arm across the body. Just picture this muscle here, really the pectorals, both of them together, shortening. What's that going to do to your shoulder? It's going to pull your shoulder closer to your sternum, okay? And you've got one on the left side, meaning both an upper pectoral muscle and a lower pectoral muscle, okay? Connecting from the sternum out to the shoulder. We have in the rear of the body a lot more muscles. I talk about it as it is because muscles only contract. The body's really designed to pull. A lot of people are doing a lot of workouts that are very much damaging their bodies because they're focusing on pushing. When your body pulls into itself to the center of it. Because even the pectoral muscles, even though they're a muscle that can push, really they can push across the body better than any other direction they could try to push. And that's essentially a pull, really, from the outside of your body pulling to the center line of your body. Okay, the body really is designed to pull. And the neutral position of the shoulders with Earth's gravity is behind the head, as I talk about it, and that's why shoulder seams on top sit behind the peak of our shoulders, okay? In the Image Clothing Company's dreaded collar seam modification, if there is ever a seam in the collar of our tops, well, tops need to stay centered around our neck, right? Look at all the musculature going up through my collar here in my neck. We have to keep our collar centered, and having a seam there only in one location will just cause the collar to not be centered, okay? It's almost always on the upper left side. This shirt is inside out just for the sake of many things, actually, branding and showing seams and filming this video specifically, okay? So yeah, modifying that collar seam to keep the collar centered around our neck, okay? Then we have more even fit left to right from things like our sternum, and then on the rear from things like our spine. The spine starts at the base of our skull, it comes down clear to the base of our hips, pelvis, really the top of the hips in a sense, okay? Our tailbone, right down here where the spine meets the hips, and then it turns into the legs, if you will. The thing with the spine and the shoulders is we have so many more muscles on the rear of the body, doing a lot more work than we do on the front. We have the 2 pectoral muscles here, but on the rear, we have an upper trapezius muscle, connects from the base of the rear of the skull along the cervical spine, which is the spine of the neck, and then down to the top/rear of the shoulder and out to the outside of the shoulder. It pulls the shoulder both in, right, from the spine in the center of the body to the outside of the shoulder. That shortens and contracts. There's your upper trapezius muscle working on the right side and on the left side. But not only does it pull the shoulders in, it also contracts upward because it connects here at the shoulder and then up here to the base of the skull, okay? So below those upper trapezius, we have some mid trapezius muscles connecting from the shoulders out here at the outsides into the spine. We have below that a lower trapezius muscle connecting out of the shoulders and into the spine. Okay, so the point with me saying all these muscles, because you don't necessarily need to know, really, all that much, I guess, but we have to get to our center line, okay? And musculature has to be even on the right side versus the left side, or I guess the right side in correlation with the left side. But it is kind of a versus, right? The right side pulls and the left side pulls, and you're in the center now if both sides are pulling evenly. So on the back, we've also got connecting at the rear of the shoulder up here, close to the top of the upper arm, but on the rear of the upper arm down here, a few inches down from the actual shoulder joint, we've got the latissimus dorsi muscle. Latissimus dorsi, I don't know, people pronounce it different. It connects from here, goes down the back, it's a big muscle, connects to some of the lowest vertebrae of the spine, and then to the crest of our pelvis. On the hips or the pelvis in the rear, they're shaped like this. They kind of curve around, and there's a crest. That muscle comes down, connects along the spine and the pelvis crest, okay? So that's coming up and connecting to the shoulder, essentially. Right here at the upper arm on the rear, close to the very top of the upper arm bone, okay? We've got triceps, 3 muscles on the rear of the arm that connect from the elbow joint up to the shoulder, okay, on the rear of the arm. And these are on both sides, okay? The latissimus dorsi, the triceps, 3 muscles on the rear of the arm. We've got biceps. This is the thing, is I don't need to label every single muscle that connects into the shoulder, but we'll give at least a good amount of context here before I start talking about even shoulders, okay? We've got deltoid muscles here, shoulder muscles, if you will, right? You think of people with big shoulder muscles, that's their deltoids right here. There's deltoid muscles on the shoulders. There's musculature that comes from the shoulder joint back into the scapula, this big bone on our upper back, rotator cuff muscles. Smaller little muscles than a lot of these other ones that I've mentioned here, and they really go into stabilizing the shoulders in their neutral position, stabilizing shoulders within their rotations, both internal rotation at the shoulder and external rotation at the shoulder, okay? And as I talk about, like I said at the beginning, that neutral wrist straight out from the pinky finger from the outside of the forearm, the hands are essentially the shoulders. So rotation that happens at the hand travels up, and the exact same thing happens at the shoulder, okay? So there's a lot going on in the shoulder, bottom line. There's more musculature than that goes into it, and then there's bones that go into it, like the collarbone, like the scapula itself. It comes up here and joins into the shoulder. The upper arm bone, the humerus is what it's called, it comes up and joins into the shoulder. And then you've got all this rotation in the shoulder. You've got just a lot of motion, and you should, naturally. The scapulas, the big bones on our upper back, they should really be able to move independently, up and down, forward and back, and in all ways, okay? And then not only independently, but with each other evenly, right? So there's a lot of motion naturally in the shoulders if they're not restricted by clothing, okay, placed on them, or whatever it comes to being that could restrict the shoulders, okay? But As we say, clothing truly is the only fix to human beings' physical problems. It's not just because we have a clothing company that we make some claim about that, but it's the only thing placed physically on us, and our bodies are just a physical thing, okay? So, the shoulders, that's what I'll talk about for now as far as the musculature and the bones that go into the shoulders, just to give some explanation, okay? I don't know everything about the mechanics of the shoulders, but I do know quite a lot, and I understand how they work and how to allow them to. So, we also have the jaw, stabilizing the entire body. Not only does it stabilize the entire body, and it can affect things like the feet that are very far from the jaw, but also the feet can affect the jaw. The jaw actually physically directly connects down to the shoulder. Okay, there's musculature in the jaw that connects, yes, to the shoulder. Okay, both shoulders and evenly. So we talk about the jaw a lot, and it stabilizes the entire body through musculature that comes from the lower jaw up into the crown of the head, okay? And musculature from the jaw comes down into the collarbones. It comes down, connects to the shoulders. It connects to, yeah. This is a big video. This is what I was saying when I said this is going to be a big video. I don't want to just give so much anatomy explanation if it's not needed. But, yeah, we've got musculature going from our shoulders into a lot of our bodies, meaning a lot of the functions of our bodies. I talk about breathing often, okay? Under In The Image Clothing Company, it's one of the main things that we talk about often because you have to breathe. It's the essence of human life, okay? It's the first thing that we have to have, really. Otherwise, we don't live, okay? As I say, it goes back to biblical times. God breathed life into Adam's nostril, and there he was, okay? But in order to breathe and expand our rib cage, which does expand in 360 degrees, meaning all the way around, if it's allowed to, okay, and unrestricted, that's just how it's designed to work, we need our shoulders to be in their neutral location, right? As I talked about, and as I say, there's a neutral position to everything in the body. So here me standing right now, my shoulders are in their neutral height, if you will, okay? Yeah, that is what it is. It's their neutral height. From here, my shoulders can drop, and from here, my shoulders can raise, okay? My shoulders reside in their neutral height because I allow my body to work. As the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, I do what I can to speak out of personal experience and example, okay? And practice what I preach, or rather preach what I have practiced, right? There's an episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast titled Preaching What You Practice, or something similar to that, okay? But the shoulders need to be at even heights because the thing with breathing is we have to get our shoulders out of the way. Our collarbones connect up here at the very peak of our shoulders. That is the bone that our shoulder seams sit behind, is the end of our collarbone, right? The opposite end from down here at the sternum where they connect, okay? And then here at the sternum where the collarbones connect, we have our sternocleidomastoid muscle, okay? That I've made quite a few videos about under the main side of In The Image Clothing Company here. But it comes down from the base of the rear of the skull, basically, right behind the ear, and connects to the collarbone and the sternum, right where they meet, okay? There's two insertions, one at the collarbone, one at the sternum, comes up, and it clears the rear of the lower jaw, okay? So, yeah, that's what I mean. There's a lot that goes into the musculature of the shoulders and the mechanics of them. So, yeah, and so that's what I mean. That's the point of the video. Yeah. Our collarbones determine where our shoulders sit. But our collarbones don't just determine where this ball at the edge of our upper body sits that we think of as the shoulder, right, where the deltoid muscles are. This isn't just the shoulder. The shoulder is the collarbone, all the way into the sternum. The shoulder is the scapula, these big bones. They're about this big, about 5 inches across in each direction, give or take, right, on the upper back. Big bones, one on each side. Those are the shoulder. So the shoulder is a lot. The shoulder really moves a lot. And it needs to be even on both sides. That's the point. This, shoot, I just don't know how to approach this, and it's fine. That's why I'm explaining it as I'm doing it, because I want it to be casual, but I want it to be real, that it's, there's a lot that goes into this. So yeah, our shoulders have a neutral position. And if we have clothing placed on them and our clothing's not centered, then our shoulders can't be. Because just picture this. I get it, you know, when people don't really know what we are as In The Image Clothing Company, and they're like, well, you know, I see that clothing could affect you and affect your body, but you know, I make the claim, if you will, that clothing's the only fix to human beings' physical problems. And it is, because we have musculature that just has insertions, one at the outside of the shoulder and one at the inside, okay? The pectorals, the trapezius are the big ones that we'll focus on, okay? And our shoulder seams of our tops need to be as even as we can from the center line of our bodies out to the edges, because I talk about it like tops are like a cage for the shoulders, okay? We have a video titled that under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company here. Our tops should just sit on our shoulders and not move. They should just lock our shoulders in place so that our shoulders are just evenly inside our tops from left to right. Because this is what happens. If our shoulder seams get imbalanced left to right, our shoulders will drop on the side that's farther out, okay? We talk about it as the right-handed world, okay? Clothing patterns themselves are designed in this right-handed patterning, if you will. If you're tying shoes unevenly, 85% of the population of human beings are right-handed, give or take, so they'll probably tie a right-handed knot on both shoes, uneven. Okay, drawstrings, you tie a right-handed knot, you take your pelvis uneven, okay? So the right-handed world, just products in life that are designed to be used with one hand over the other. For the majority of the use, they'll be designed for the right hand to use them, okay? Just because most people are right-handed. So, the right-handed world. Our clothing will stretch out to our dominant side, if it stretches at all. But even the material with no stretch, which is what we need always, okay? Because muscles only contract, which is the opposite direction of stretch. But just any wear in clothing will wear more on our dominant side, the side we're using more. And so our shoulder seams at the edges of our shoulders, if they're going to be uneven, they'll be farther away from our body on the side that's just getting used the most. Our dominant side for almost everybody, give or take, right? The right side. So this is the big problem with this. There's insertions to muscles. We talk about under In The Image Clothing Company how the human body is actually about the skeletal system. I never ever, yikes, but I don't give stretches because of what I was just saying. Muscles shorten. We need them to constantly work and be activated as a whole. The entire body, that's the only way that it actually works. Otherwise, something else has to try to make up for work that something's not doing. But we get into patterning where things get chronically stretched or elongated on one side of our body or on one function of the body, for example, okay? And like the elbow, I guess I'll explain that a little bit. Let's say your arm is constantly open only and your elbow never actually bends closed, then your triceps, being the muscles that open the arm, are the ones that are always shortened, and the bicep, the muscle that closes the arm, is always elongated or chronically stretched, if you will, because they're opposing muscles, okay? Muscles on the right side of the body are opposing muscles on the left side, okay? The right pectorals oppose the left pectorals, okay? As you can just see, because there's a center line to the body, bone structure-wise, and just insertion left to right, but then there's a center of gravity as well, okay? So if our tops are imbalanced off to one side, let's say it's the right, because it will be for almost everybody on the earth, because almost everybody will have the right being their dominant side, that they're just using more, and then it's just wearing the material off to the right, okay, for the top. And so the edges of the tops will be falling off to the right. Not only is your musculature being pulled and elongated or stretched farther on the right than the left, but we have specifically at least one muscle, the upper trapezius, which when it contracts, it doesn't only come in, but it comes up, okay? So elongating the muscles, meaning stretching or pulling on the muscles out to the side, in the case of the upper trapezius, as just one of them, okay, it pulls it down as well, because there's multiple insertions to the upper trapezius. It's on the top of the shoulder area, it's on the spine, but then it's also connecting from the bottom up, if you will, to the base of the skull, right off from the spine. So even if our tops stayed at the same height left to right, when they stretched out on the right side more than left side, okay, we're going to pull our shoulder down just because of the angles of pull on certain muscles like the upper trapezius, okay? So I talk about it like this: the patterning we get into, this right-handed patterning that we get out of under In the Image Clothing Company, because that's really what we do, is rid chronic patterning and scar tissue and then allow the body to stay unrestricted from there. It's a right-handed patterning, okay? And what it does is take the right side of the body and put it farther away from the center line, as I'm showing here, pulling on these muscles. It drops it, as I'm discussing here, like the upper trapezius muscle that pulls both up and in, and then it rotates the body external or away from its center, okay? Because internal rotation at the shoulder capsule is actually an elevated position. Picture that upper trapezius muscle, right? It pulls up and it pulls in, okay? If we follow our thumbs, if we point our thumbs forward and then we raise our shoulders up and pull our shoulders in, to get our shoulders in as close as we can, we have to rotate our arms all the way inward. Otherwise, you'll just have binding up of things, because in order for things to clear in the actual joint of the shoulder, you have to rotate inward, internal rotation, okay, toward the center line of the body, where the most strength within the body is, how the feet arches grip inward, okay, and just half of the body's rotation, right? Internal versus external, okay? And when I say half, the body really works with an emphasis on internal rotation, just because that means the musculature's shortening. And that's how muscles work, is by shortening, okay? So stop pushing is the big thing for all you who do workouts. Get your body closest to its own self, to its center line, okay? Then it will work better, is the point. No kind of like workout advice. That's just how the body works mechanically. So here's the thing. We have to keep our shoulders at even heights, because oversized tops, even if, like I'm saying, it's even at the height, falling off to one side will pull that shoulder down, okay? So there's a lot that happens here in clothing that doesn't allow the shoulders to be at even heights. And the thing with the shoulder is there's a lot going into it. Like I said at the beginning, right? All the musculature, the pectoral muscles, the trapezius muscles. We've got rhomboids in the back. We've got the lats. We've got, there's a lot of muscles going into the shoulder's function. And the rotator cuff is actually a pretty complex little group of muscles that does a lot to stabilize the shoulder. There's just so much happening in the shoulder. You just think about all the functions that your shoulder has, and it really does a lot of motion, rotation, and it works in so many different ways. And depending on what position you're in, you need all the musculature that goes into allowing the shoulder to do that position to be able to be in its neutral location. So our shoulders have to stay at even heights. Now, here's the thing. We've got the dreaded collar seam, as I mentioned, And if we've just got excess material in our collar just on one side of our body, it's twice as thick. That's what they do with, at least, you know, this generalized modern t-shirt design. But anytime there's a seam in the collar, right? But yeah, they fold the material over, and so now it's doubled, and then they fold it from the other side over, and now it's doubled, and they stitch that together. So you've got twice as thick of material in one little area on just one side of your body, and it'll just be higher. I mean, it's just twice as thick. And then when you think about just all the motion you do in your life with your shoulders, you're always just twice as thick of material higher on one side, with musculature that's connecting into your spine and connecting to the outside of your shoulder, okay? So it's directly, just about at least, on that upper trapezius muscle. That's where that dreaded collar seam sits, is directly on that upper trapezius muscle. That's where it is. Okay, it's almost always on the left side. Again, if this shirt was not inside out, this seam would be on the left side of my body, right on my left upper trapezius muscle, okay? So that'll just cause your shoulders to be uneven. And then anything you ever do, you are deepening that patterning because you're doing whatever you do in your life within an imbalance, okay, in your shoulders. And your shoulders contraction at its musculature from one side of your body to the other, okay, just from excess material. There's just something there in the way of your body's ability to work. You'll reach and there's just thicker material, so you'll reach and the side that doesn't have the seam will just be able to move easier because it's just not as stiff. There's not twice as much material, right? So it's just as real as it gets. That's why I've emphasized since the very, very founding of In the Image Clothing Company, the dreaded collar seam modification is one of the absolute biggest things you could possibly do in clothing. The only thing placed on your body that could possibly alter your body physically by touching it, okay? But yeah, to help your body, that dreaded collar seam modification is huge, so important. Okay, this one's been done. By the way, if that's not obvious enough, I wouldn't be wearing this unless I had no other choice. If I hadn't done the modification that I'm talking about when I do have a collar seam in this top. But even shoulders, okay? We talk about it keeping short sleeves short off the forearm so we can actually bend our forearm all the way. We talk about internal rotation of the forearm, okay? And these are videos we have under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company here. Keeping short sleeves short, internal rotation of the forearm, the importance of even short sleeves. That's another video we have because, yes, right, your short sleeves will be uneven if you have something like a dreaded collar seam. Or if your shoulder seams are just uneven, it's just the same material traveling down to your sleeves, okay? But anything that's just in the way on one side of your body and not the other will just alter the height of your shoulders. And then now all that musculature that I mentioned, plus anything else that I didn't mention that goes into the functionality of the shoulders, will just be uneven from left to right. And it's going directly into your spine. And our spine is in the center of the body, okay? Not only that, but each vertebrae of the spine has a lot of motion in it. And it carries our spinal cord, okay? From our brain, how deep do I want to get with the discussion is what that face was. I'm like, holy cow, yeah, we could talk about it as deep as whatever, but yeah. There's a hawk up there. Spinal cord, okay? It carries the electrical signal from our brain down between the center of all of our vertebrae, right? The bones that make up our spine. There's a lot of them that go down to our tailbone, to our hips. And in there's a cord that sends electrical signals through our whole body, our sense of touch and just our ability to feel things, down to our toes, out to our fingertips, from our brain, goes through the spine. And where does the spine go through? The collar of our top, okay? So our top's sitting on our shoulders have to be at even heights, okay? Anyway, the big thing is it'll travel down to your feet. The arches in our feet can be affected by let's say nothing else besides just a little seam in the collar of our top, that will affect our feet greatly, okay? I know that was worded kind of like roundabout, but that's what I mean is if the rest of your entire clothing that you wear is even waistline of your pants, pant cuffs off your ankles, right? How pant cuffs affect body mechanics under the main side of In The Image Clothing Company. Your shoes are laced and tied just the only way the human feet will work, right? With that neutral ankle, gripped arches, pinky toes pointing straight forward, neutral outward curvature of the lower leg traveling up into the hips with rotations like the forearms, internal and external, down at the lower legs. Okay, and then traveling from there up to the hips, like at the shoulder, both internal and external, at the shoulder and the hips. Golly, this is a lot of information. I don't want to say things that people won't understand because the point of making these videos is for people to understand. But yeah, I mean, we have to keep our shoulders even because if there is a discrepancy, even just like the dreaded collar seam on our shoulders, because the shoulders essentially these upper trapezius muscles that go right along where that dreaded collar seam is so commonly placed, okay? Then our feet can't grip evenly inward with their arches. So one foot will fall outward a little bit because the arch will collapse. And then in this case, it would be the left side because the collar seam's on the right. So it's just higher, meaning the muscle can contract more, okay? That's what that muscle does, right? The upper trapezius. When it gets shorter, it comes up. So the other side that's not restricted by anything will actually be lower. So that side's arch in the foot will not be able to grip because you grip an arch in your foot and it elevates, right? Like the hands, it gets taller, right? Like the hand arches, the arches in our hands or our just natural rounded open palm correlate directly with our feet arches. The hands and the feet only have very slight differences to them, okay? So yikes. This is yeah, it's a big video. So the shoulders have to be at even heights, and they just have to, always. And it can come from anything because like what I just said about the arches in the feet getting taller as they grip, I've worded it like this before where if you tie shoes unevenly, like to the right, a right-handed knot on both feet, and your shoes are unevenly tied, then your right foot can't grip an arch inward because the knot of the rope will just push your foot outward or external and your arch grips inward, and you're not going to fight a knot around your ankle of a rope ever. Nobody could, right? It's a rope. That's all shoelaces are, and drawstrings, okay? And I get this, by the way. I understand the shadowing. But I've noticed that through the whole video. Soccer goal tripod, okay? But here's the thing, really, is the whole side of the body that can't grip an arch, if one of them can't, is a whole gripped arch's distance lower than the other side of the body. So that travels all the way up to the shoulder. And so now, because your shoes are tied uneven, right, then the side that's tied incorrect, that whole side of the body up to the tip of your head really will be dropped, okay? Like we talk about with, you know, all the musculature in the face and the ear and the nose and just the whole side of the body that gets inhibited, the shoulder will just be that much lower, always, okay? So that's a big reason why they put into clothing designs these imbalances, because if people are tying drawstrings toward one side and shoelaces toward one side, then people are imbalanced, and so centered tops won't feel right if the rest of your body is imbalanced from ropes down at your feet or around your waist. Okay, these are the real reasons why this stuff happens, but people don't know where to look if you don't know where to look. In the Image Clothing Company, we do. Okay, so there's soccer games going on, if you couldn't tell by now. Our shoulders just need to be at even heights, and it goes into a lot of things because we talk about the jaw, okay? The jaw stabilizes the entire body. We've got videos titled Eating and Drinking with the Left Hand, and really that just means the non-dominant hand, because teeth just wear, right? We grind things down between our teeth. Friction of grinding We'll just wear the teeth over time. That's not a problem. That just will happen no matter what. So if you're always eating on just one side of your body, meaning just with one hand, that side of your jaw will be the side that gets worn down more, okay? Now your head will tilt and your jaw will come to the right, and then your jaw stabilizing your whole body will be off-centered when your body has a center line and gravity still has its center that it pulls down on everything with, okay? So the big thing is our shoulders will pull on our jaw, okay? And we talk about it like the video titled, The Importance of Even Nostrils. Our shoulders can pull on our nose, right? It's just the same skin, but also the musculature just travels from the shoulder to the head, right? We have to stabilize our head. That's what our jaw is doing, but also the musculature going into our head, like the upper trapezius muscles, okay? So if our shoulders are at uneven heights, our jaw will certainly be uncentered. It just will have to be, because the musculature that's stabilizing our head comes from our shoulders, okay? Even this sternocleidomastoid, it comes from essentially the shoulder. The collarbone here at the very insertion to the sternum, right, where this sternocleidomastoid muscle is, it is the same bone that's here at the very edge of the peak of the shoulder out here, right? That our shoulder seams sit behind and that our edge seams sit very close to. It should be just about right there, really, right? As close as we can get, because that's just where the shoulder moves, is at the end of that collarbone. So this is what I mean. The importance of even height shoulders, because you have to. You literally have to, mechanically, on Earth's gravity, with a human body that just has a center line. We're not nitpicky with things under In the Image Clothing Company when we get nitpicky with things, but there truly is only one way the human body could ever work. So we need the length of musculature to just be the same on each side of the body, okay? And that will only ever happen if the thing that we place onto it, being directly, in this case, our tops, is even in all the ways that it can be. The sleeves off the elbows, so that the elbows can evenly bend all the way, okay, with those short sleeves. The edge seams evenly at the edges of our shoulders, so that our shoulders are evenly contracted inward versus outward, if you will, from the sternum to the outside of the shoulder, and from the spine to the outside of the shoulder, on both sides, okay? And then the top seams behind the peak of our shoulders evenly. And that's one thing that dreaded collar seam modification will really, really help with. Not only dropping that material down lower, just because it's thicker material, but also allowing it to move and flex in a way that allows the shoulder seams to actually fall behind the shoulders, because the shoulder seams will sit imbalanced. With that seam there, it'll just be stiffer and not allow the seams to just move, right? When the collar can't just flex and move evenly, it's connected to the shoulder seams, right? At least in these designs, which is the most common t-shirt design nowadays, the shoulder seam actually becomes the rear of the collar. And then there's where that collar seam is right there, okay? It's actually what we're cutting in the dreaded collar seam modification, is the same material that comes out and becomes the shoulder seam that sits on top of our shoulders, really behind the peak of them. So, yikes, right? Big video. This is what I was saying. It's a lot. This is a big one. So, yeah, it is. I'm kind of like flustered with it, because this is one of those videos where I haven't made a video like this. I talk about the shoulders, and I talk about how the shoulders only ever work behind the head. I talk about shoulders follow shoulder seams. You know, I talk about the shoulders quite a bit, but I've never made a video, at least up until this one. Now I have, right? Titled, Shoulders Need to Be at Even Heights, okay? The importance of even height shoulders. So, here comes the wind. Point being, anything you ever do in your life to try to address your shoulder health, if there's anything in your entire body or any of the clothing placed on any part of your body, because something else will compensate, okay, that's not even, your shoulders won't be even. And so anything you ever do, you'll train your body into an imbalance. And just seriously, one of the absolute biggest things is that little thing, the dreaded collar seam. It's just, I mean, one of the most important things that you could ever address in clothing when it comes to imbalances. Okay, so, and it's so common. I mean, it's in the majority of t-shirts that get made nowadays in 2025, which is unreal. So needless to say, but I have said it and I'll say it again, In the Image Clothing Company will never make a design with a seam in the collar. We have to keep collars centered. You have to, otherwise your shoulders will be imbalanced. They just will be. And so when we get out of these chronic patternings, that's one of the biggest things that we do, is just address allowing the musculature to contract evenly left to right in the body. Okay, so we talk about locations in the body where there's scar tissue that gets built up. There's a video titled Scar Tissue in the Body under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company here. And we talk about the right side of the body, just about the only side you need to address because of the right-handed world, as I was saying. It's windy. I don't know how loud this wind is on the mic, depending on where the camera's placed. A lot of times it's not such a big deal, and sometimes it's decently loud. So I'm gonna keep speaking regardless, okay? But the outside of the pinky finger on the right side specific, okay, for all these things I'm mentioning, the outside of the forearm, the elbow, the collarbone, the pelvis crest, the lower leg, okay, on that shin bone, the Achilles tendon insertion, right, on the rear of our leg where it inserts to the heel of our foot on the right side. And we have videos about these things, okay, the right elbow, incorporating the pinky finger, okay, involving the pinky finger, I think is what it's called. The pinky finger affects the entire body. Dorsiflexion of the right foot. Yeah, okay. There's a lot of videos that we have that we talk about the right side of the body. And if you can't extend your right arm as well as you can extend your left arm, then you'll never elevate your right shoulder. Because in order to actually get your shoulders neutral, okay, with gravity up and down, you have to extend your arms all the way, because then gravity is just pulling straight down on your arm rather than having a bend in your arm, and gravity is just affecting one side differently with a bend than the other side that's straight, okay? But in order to, as I was saying, straighten the elbow all the way, we have to have our arms at our sides, and we have to have our shoulder at a neutral height, because that's just what it'll do, because you're contracting muscles like the triceps that connect into the shoulder. So as they shorten, connecting from the elbow joint up to the shoulder, those triceps shortening essentially lifts the shoulder. It does, to a degree, just because of how it works mechanically, okay? And then it puts the shoulder in a neutral, locked out position. So anything inhibiting the elbow not being able to extend all the way, your shoulder will just be lower on that side. Anything inhibiting your hands, okay? We talk about keeping hands the same size, the importance of same size hands, right? Under In the Image Clothing Company's main side. We talk about this because if your hand is altered and bigger, really, is, you know, one of the things on one side, your shoulder will never be able to elevate, because your hand is essentially your shoulder. When your hand contracts, meaning gets closed all the way, that's how we raise our shoulder. Like when our elbow joint gets closed all the way, but really meaning extended or in line, right? Then that's how we raise our shoulder. And you can try these things for yourself, you know, just kind of like play with your body like a machine in a sense, meaning play with what it does when you move the levers of the body. That's why we talk about it as we do. It's just a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space, and it has to be able to evenly do things, evenly rotate on each shoulder. Man, that feels good actually. And evenly hinge, right, in all the ways, evenly lay against our sides, because that's your shoulder. Your arm laying against your side evenly is actually your shoulder. So we talk about it like this, right? Mind the gap. In episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, I talked about many things. One of the main things that I talked about physically, because I also talked about a lot with the gospel of Jesus Christ, was the gap between our own arm, like the elbow or the inside of our upper arm, well, or just traveling down our whole arm and even to our hand, okay? And then from there to our own side, our own rib cage, our own leg, allowing our arms to evenly lay with gravity at our own sides. And so if you've got an oversized top, I talked about what the edge seams of the shoulders will do, but not only that, the edge seams of the shoulders are the same as the edges of the armpits, okay? And so traveling down your sides, if your shoulder seam at the edge is off to the side, then your whole top around your rib cage on the same side is off to the side as well, and now you have a gap. And your elbow has to be at your side to fully extend to get your shoulder at the same height as the other side that has a fully extended elbow, okay? So shoulders need to be at the same height. Importance of even height shoulders, okay? So yeah, we talk about a lot of things, you know, the importance of blank, and then whatever it is with both sides of the body, the importance of even sternocleidomastoid insertions behind the ear here, because this is a muscle that connects to the shoulder, like I was showing earlier. Even though it connects clear in the center here, the sternum and the collarbone, it's affecting the collarbone. And the collarbone is the shoulder. And so, right, things in the ears really affect the jaw. Okay, don't put things in your ears. This video could get so deep. Okay, the cartilage in our ears, the cartilage in our nose, like the importance of even nostrils, like the video I referenced, those are some of the locations where posture, quote unquote, or problems with, quote, posture, unquote, come from, okay, is discrepancies in the cartilage of the nose and the ears. And so the height of your shoulders really can be determined by things like that. So anyway, we get into it in depth. If it's not clear, this is In the Image Clothing Company, and we have to keep our shoulders at the same heights. So how sleeve cuffs affect body mechanics, keeping things off the wrists because they'll probably be uneven anyways. Sleeve cuffs, if they are too long and not fitting well, but then also just the wrist has to have its own function, right? We can't alter the hands or we alter the shoulders. The importance of having fingernails. We have to have our fingernails fully supporting the tips of our fingers. That's why God gave them to us. Often we cut our fingernails too short as human beings, and we don't have our natural strength, and then our hands altered, and then our shoulders altered, okay? And I talk about it like this: people will normally cut if one side is shorter than the other. Their dominant hands, fingernails, shorter because they're easier to clean. They're the side that would get dirtier more often, okay? So there's a lot that goes into this, man. There's a lot that goes into this. So, yeah, keeping shoulders at even height. Tags and clothing, right? You've got tags and they're almost always only in one side of clothing. If they're on one side of clothing, that's redundant and obvious, but okay, we get into it in depth. I'm gonna start to outro this, because I could talk about this forever until I run out of things that I know up until now to speak on. But just know, it's so much more than just your shoulders. It's not your shoulder health. Your shoulder is your hand. Your shoulder is your jaw. Your shoulder is your nose. Your shoulder is your ears. Your shoulder is your foot arch, okay? Your shoulder is your hips. You rotate your pelvis with a drawstring. Your shoulders will never be able to be even from a knot imbalanced around your waist. From your hips, it travels through your spine to your shoulders, okay? So the importance of even height shoulders is huge. It's obvious, right? As I say, it's as obvious as it is once you see it. Here's a lot of explanation that I've given in this one video alone. But we do this, okay? Under In the Image Clothing Company, we get in depth. We allow the human body to work. So In the Image Clothing Company clothing on InTheImageClothingCompany.com, staying centered, fitting correct, being made from 100% natural materials, minimal, brandless on the exterior, right? Just nice, simple, quality clothing. Dog products as well. In the Image Clothing Company dog products for any dogs, not just poodle specific. But yes, collars, leashes, harnesses, keeping collars centered is the same for dogs, and it almost never happens, okay? Owners of dogs almost always have dog tags placed on their dogs, and that goes directly to the dog's shoulder function. Dogs don't have collarbones, but they're just a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space as well, okay? They just have one way that they could ever work. They have a center line. So dog products as well as human being clothing. Puppies when we have litters, and very specific on who the puppies go to, right? There's a screening process. You'll fill out an application if you decide to. But check us out, and a third time you can do it if you'd like. Check us out again. But in the Image Clothing Company podcast, it's a beautiful place to be. In the Image Clothing Company music if you'd like to check it out. And there you go, okay? Involve yourself if you'd like to come to Poodle Parade events. And there you go, okay? There you go. There you go. That's where I'll leave it. There's so much more that I can say, and I've been saying that lately when I have in videos, because there is, on what's affecting any particular part of the body, from clothing through clothing, right? When I give these explanations through these videos. But we'll talk about it as we do. We'll deepen explanations as we do. I'll deepen understandings as I do. And there you go. Okay, so it's the 5th? I think it's the 5th. It might be this, yeah, I'm almost certain it's the 5th of September 2025. It's a Saturday, whatever date that was, okay? Look back if you'd like. I don't know why, but there you go. Yeah, my name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. So stick around. Big things. I'll make all the claims that I want, and you don't have to care, but it'll line up. Just know there's a reason why I'm saying the things that I'm saying, and there you go, okay? Stick around for the poodles and make sure your shoulders are at even heights. Check out all the things we do talk about with the anatomy of the human body and how to ensure that our shoulders can just naturally be at even heights, right? Where to look to rid the scar tissue in the body, and yeah, good stuff. Okay? Allowing the body to work. In the Image Clothing Company. Thank you.